Hey, Lee is not here. He's with his woman. So figured I would come in for a minute and, well, however long we end up going. Figured I would pop in and say hey to everybody and tell you about what's going on here today. So if you didn't see it in the community, got my first queen hatched in one of the vertical splits, and don't know if she's mated yet. I didn't see any eggs, but she was definitely walking around in there, and I picked her up, marked her, put her back in. So glad everybody is wanting to spend some time. Please smash that like button, and if you share, and if you don't share, well, you don't share, that's fine. But yeah, it was a good day. And then give some updates on the other colony. James may be meeting up in here with me in a minute. Let's see. I hope he does. Hope he pops in. And I haven't gotten any email back from him, but he'll probably get the notification. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat, guys, for anybody interested to come in. And let me make sure this is on live chat. And let me make sure that link is pinned. Boom, pinned to the top. Good to go. All right. So, got the queen back in the one vertical split. And I have some questions that we're going to try to address if we get some people in here about that, about queen cells and the timing that it takes for the colony tearing down additional queen cells. My thought is, and everyone says, well, virgin hatches, she goes around, stings all the other ones. I don't know if that's the case. I wonder. I'm sure it's pretty close, but my thing is, when the virgin hatches, her pheromone is not that strong. So, do they wait till after she flies out and comes back mated and then tear them down? Because isn't it kind of counterproductive to have 10 cells in there and then one hatches and then you put all your... There's Charlie. Charlie. Can't hear you yet.
Yeah, I'm setting things
up. Oh, there
up.
You go. I hear you now. There you go. But, and then what else did I do today, Charlie?
He called me.
I called you.
He was excited about his queen bee.
Yeah, my queen, my marked queen now, and then the cutout colony has all been consolidated into one 10 frame box, frame of brood, food. But I went into that second vertical split that has several queen cells in it, and a couple of them, they're gnawing the end, right, to help her get out.
Hey, Mike.
So then I had another cell that was basically where a supersedure cell would be if it was a normal supersedure. And I cut around that in the brood and behind it with the razor and took it out and took it over to the cutout colony. And I took my big fat thumb and made an indention in their brood frame and then inserted that cutout cell right into the brood frame, and bees came right to it and covered it up. Good bee coverage in there. So hopefully,
sound like a good viable queen to me.
I mean, they wouldn't have went over. I mean, they would have maybe checked it out, but they wouldn't have covered her up and everything. It's my opinion anyway. I mean, so now I should have queens going everywhere. I took a picture of it. I don't think I posted it because it's kind of hard when all the bees get on it, right? But try to show you that. Let's see. Right in. Nope, right there. Can you see that?
All right, is that the cell?
Yeah, right there.
Hey, Vincent.
So what they're doing is cleaning up the royal jelly from the other, where the brood that was around it that I cut out and put that cell in. So, and I had to blow on them to get them to move out of the way that much, so you could get a picture. So yeah, they've got they got a queen cell anyway, one that came off of one of those eggs and cells came off of one of my strong colonies. So I know it's a good stock to pull it from, right? And at this point, any queen in that colony is better than no queen. So even if she comes back and starts laying and they don't like her and supersede her, well, then they can make some more. So it's going to be a good thing, I think. I'm just excited, man, because I got to actually do bees today. Did some bees. So who all we got in here? I see Cajun, Mike, Jeff.
Got
Lisa, Chris, Vincent, Lagrange, Stuffy, Steve, Robert, Sunbunny. Man, we got a lot of people in here for an impromptu. I talked to James earlier too, so he might be popping in. So this could be very, and you guys had two very different opinions, by the way. You and I, remember where we were talking about the queen cells and when they start to tear those cells down? And we were kind of like, well, there is a thought process where, hey, Tom, there is a thought process that as soon as the virgin comes out, it goes and kills all the other cells.
Well, right? Actually, no, not actually. A friend of mine had a, the observation hive. And he heard the queen, there's multiple queen cells in there. He knew that. He heard one of the queen's pipe. And he said right then and there, he says the whole hive went crazy. And the one he was piping was fine. The rest of them, the worker bees went around, started chewing the sides out to kill the other queens and stuff. So I think it's not just, I think it's the worker bee that does a lot more so than what the queen does.
Well, and that's what I saw. I don't know if you remember, I don't know if I even said it on here or if I said it on a phone call, but the first round of queens or cells that I put in there, I never saw a virgin walking around. So I gave them an additional frame, right? Cells produced. Oh, here we go. And in the corner is the Edmonton, Alberta. Oh, in this corner from Grand Prairie, Alberta, it's the Alberta Destroyer, James McNally.
How are you guys?
Doing good. Don't see your onesie yet.
Oh, I got no picture. I have no picture tonight.
Your picture usually shows up after you do, once it clears customs.
There you go. But what do you do?
So no, go. What were you saying, James?
I was just wondering how you guys are doing tonight.
I'm doing great. I got a queen, a marked queen, James. I know how old she is, about at least only a couple weeks.
Well, that's a start. That's one in your apiary.
Hey, Steve.
But I also grafted a queen cell, not grafting as in grafting queens, but grafted a queen cell from one colony to my cutout colony.
Oh, nice.
So,
oh, your icon cleared customs.
yeah, the icon made it through across the border. And I just blinked. It's going through the security scan right now.
Well, what do you do? So,
What are you doing, James? Sounds like to me you got yourself a nailer running.
no, actually, I'm sitting in front of the fireplace. It's just getting crackling nicely here. So,
I thought you were typing on an old school typewriter. I was waiting on the ching.
No, I'll show you guys a picture. Well, except the picture doesn't seem to be working. So I just threw a log on there and it literally just lit it up. So it'll stop cracking and popping here in a minute.
So we were talking about the whole, when does a queen cell get torn down? At what point do they say, yeah, we got one, we need to go ahead and tear it down? So is it when the pheromone from the new queen gets strong enough that the colony senses, it's time to tear it down? Charlie said that he had a buddy that had an observation hive that heard the queen piping from inside of a cell, and then the workers started tearing down the other cells.
Well, that I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. So there's a number of reasons they'll tear the cell down, though, right? Because he's not wearing the onesie. What if I told you I was wearing the onesie? You would never know.
He said that's the reason you don't have the picture, because you're not wearing anything. You're sitting by the fire in your skivvies.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, since I did that, but it gives the neighbor something to watch. So I was going to say there'll be a number of reasons they'll tear the queen cell down. So most likely what's happened in your case is that virgin probably emerged, and she probably went around and she probably stung the other queen cells in there, which means she would have killed the queens inside, and therefore, if your bees are any hygienic at all, they would remove the cell.
Now, let me ask you this, James. Doesn't she have to chew a hole in that side, then she stings?
No, she'll sting. She'll sting it right straight through there.
Really?
So, yeah.
But we've all had those queen cells and how hard they are once they've been walked on for 2 weeks, where they're real dark brown and hard. So, of course, I know all too well how far a stinger can travel, right?
Well, and the queen stinger's not barbed, so it's not like a worker. So it's an unbarbed, and it is
That's
longer,
true.
and it is longer than the workers. So.
So that is kind of curious, because I've got one frame out there, but there's 2 cells. They're in kind of the location of a swarm cell, right? They're on the bottom of the frame, where they're hanging down from the bottom of the frame. And both of those are being worked at, I would say, equally fiercely to thin out that bottom cap of the cell. it's kind of a race to see which one is going to hatch first.
Kind of a nice problem to have.
Yeah, and there's more queen cells in there, and I would have loved to cut some more, but because it's a plastic frame, I couldn't like whittle the wood behind it.
Right.
And I was worried if I tried to break off one of those cells off of the bottom, I would have crashed one. So I'm gonna let the odds play out on that.
Right. So you must have a craft store down there or something like that.
Oh yeah. Well, I got
So-
the here comes
So
Brad.
if you go to a pottery store or somebody that has like a clay molding store, they'll have a knife. It's a flat back knife, and it's they use it for cutting away clay and stuff like that on pottery. And
Right.
it works really, really well. It'll go right around that queen cell. You can literally bring it right up from the bottom, right up all the way to the top, and it cuts them out really, really nice.
Well, what Lisa says that's amazing, but what about the swarm with 4 or 5 virgins in it?
Well, you probably find lots of swarms like that, depending as to where they're at.
But I mean, doesn't that kind of poke a hole in the virgin hatching out and stinging all the other cells?
Yeah, all depends as to when and how big the hive is and everything else, right?
I just used a one of those cheap razor blade knives that that you just use your thumb and it slides out kind of like a pin.
Yep.
That's what I use.
Oh, I'm very sarcastic. If you can't get.
Brad, are you very sarcastic, or was that Charlie?
1 minute.
I didn't say anything.
That was your phone.
Oh. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Congestion plays a factor. Genetics plays a factor too. Yep.
Yeah, like I say, there's lots of factors that.
I mean, and then I've seen hives that have 2 queens in it, right? I had one last year. So I was just excited that after that time, but you remember James I think it was last week, I might've been speaking to you and I said, well, there's a cell that looks like it hatched out, but I haven't seen the queen anywhere.
Yep.
That could have been her coming. That could have been her that came back.
Absolutely.
Because I remember I said I went and added another frame of eggs and larvae on there, and then there was more cells after that.
Well, and she could have been there too. You just might not have seen her.
So, yep. So I don't know. I know I have a queen now that has got a red dot on her. So if I go back and there's not a queen with a red dot on her, hey, I know she's been replaced, right?
That's right.
Did y'all get a chance to see the video with Bruce's Bees with Corey Stevens?
No.
No.
He I think he just put it out today. He was talking about introducing virgin queens, queen cells to your splits, even mated queens. But he was talking about how sometimes the bees tear down when you make a split and you add a cell. They'll tear down that cell and they'll go ahead and make a supersedurous cell instead, or they'll kill a virgin queen and make a supersedurous cell. He said to do it like the way a swarm does, because a queen stops laying 7 days before she swarms. That way, there's no eggs, no larvae in the hive.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when the virgin queen hatches, she's small enough to fly away from stop laying, and the new hive accepts that virgin because they're hopelessly queenless. The bees that stay in the hive are hopelessly queenless because there's no more eggs, no more larvae that's old enough to make a cell, so they accept the virgin that they leave behind. So he said he did a study. He took 20 or so of his colonies and he made his splits, put his virgin queen in a capped cage in the split, left her there for 7 days, went back, they had made queen cells with her in the cage. He tears down the queen cells and then releases the virgin queen. he said now on the ones that he just put the cell or the Virgin Queen the same day he made the splits, he didn't have as much success as he did where he waited 7 days, tore down the queen cells they made, and made them hopelessly queenless.
All right. So when was it? Saturday night, I went out there and got stung up, putting a frame of brood from one colony into the other, right? And they made no cells on that frame. Could have been they were too old or whatever, but there was no cells. So I went in there and gave them a cell. And when did I start that cutout? I mean, I finished the cutout on Saturday. Today's Monday. So they've been at least 3 or 4 days queenless, right? So hopefully they don't have any other option. They got to let her play out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I mean,
that's what he was. He was saying. As long as they don't have options, they'll make that easier.
Yeah, if you take away all their options, it does make it a little bit easier. But you know what? I had the same thing happen where they'll actually let her go and get mated, come back, start laying, and then kill her, and then make a queen out of her eggs that she left behind.
Eggs.
Yep. So it's like, it's y'all done run James off.
I think that's another situation that I heard somebody else talking about. It's where you have a queen in there and the bees are without eggs for a certain, or without larvae for a certain period of time, and they have this queen, they know she's there. So when she does start laying, they think she's not good enough because she didn't already start laying like on a timely manner.
Right.
So they go ahead and supersede her. They go ahead and supersede her with her eggs because they think she's not going to be good enough.
Like that queen today. I don't know if she's mated or not mated because I didn't see any eggs in there, but she looked bigger than a virgin queen. And, but she could have been a virgin, but she wasn't running around crazy like they do in Hard to Catch. I just basically grabbed her.
I don't know personally how many days from when they come back from their mating flight do they start laying. Do they start laying immediately, or do they?
Usually it's like a week, right? Close to 5.
It's at least it's three or four. To really get up and running is about a week, but it'll take her a few days to start.
So, I mean, I don't have very big.
And I've heard some other guys that are a little more experienced about queens, and let's say you put a virgin in there, and you don't want to disturb her for like 2 weeks because.
Oh, thanks. You just bust my bubble right there because I would.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the way I get it is that you.
Bob's marking her, pulling the wings, pulling the legs.
There it is. You're changing the pheromones or something like that in that 2 week period when you disturb them like that. So.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say you shouldn't shouldn't go in with a virgin queen.
Well, that ain't a virgin.
But I've done.
You don't think that's a virgin?
No.
I mean, her wings look nice and developed.
I
don't know. You think she's mated, James?
I think so. She's got a nice start. You see her adamant starting to swell up there. I think. Let's see if I can. Let's see if I can make her any bigger. I don't know.
Can you blow up her butt?
Well, the wings are shorter than her butt. That's normal.
So
yeah,
you see, Bob can mark them. You see that? I got the pin right there in my hand as evidence. I still have the painting my boxes on my hand. So it is my hand.
Lee says she's mated, and if anybody knows that she's mated, Lee would know because he does the NICOT system.
Yeah.
So he would know a mated queen.
That's a joke because he put the NICOT in and never put the queen in the NICOT system.
He has skeletons in that thing.
Hey, but he didn't show a picture of what it looked like in his colony either. So I'm curious how
No,
if they combed up
he just
all around.
told us
everything.
about it. He just told us about it.
I'll be right back. Supper just walked in the door, so I'm going to go grab a quick bite.
Oh, all right. But the so that's that's the one thing, and then I did the I was able to put the
Well, you're
graft.
lucky. You messing around with queens and stuff like that. We haven't started nothing yet.
Now keep in mind, when did I make that split? That vertical split was. Oh, look at that!
Oh, great!
Look at that.
You
He's
get to
got
look at
a
his
double fireplace. Isn't that another fireplace like next to his fireplace?
Well, in Canada, that's when
Apple?
you need double the BTUs because it's a little bit colder out there. Everybody's got to have a place to put their feet. There's not enough place at one fireplace. So
I don't understand what James is talking about. It says just pin it to the answer. What answer?
Sawmill Charlie's Bee Farm. Just pin it to the chat answer. I don't know. She looks.
How's your bees doing, Brad?
We did have a couple of days of sunlight this past weekend, and they were flying really good. And all the hives that I do have left are all very active. So I started putting some swarm boxes together and making some frames and stuff, just getting ready because about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I went and put pollen patties in all the hives. So they looking good. So I'm hoping I get to do some splits. I'm gonna try to raise some queens and put some more mating nukes out there and try to get the count back up to at least 30 or 40. I want it to go to 40. And so I'm kind of sitting right now around 20 because I lost those 10, and then I'm gonna try to get that back and try to do at least 10 more.
Well, is the pollen coming in your area down there?
Yeah, this weekend we was getting something, some yellow, some lime colored green pollen, and I mean they were just hitting the entrances, so they were getting it from somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think. I guess they're not really messing with your pollen sub either. With that coming in.
I can't say that because they were hitting it hard 2 weeks ago when I put it in there because I went back like 4 or 5 days later and checked it and they were hitting it, but then I haven't checked this weekend. Mm-hmm. I was hoping they finished it off since the pollen is starting to come in pretty good.
Sorry, I meant to stop screen, not add it back. But I was trying to see when I made the vertical split.
Well, pollen's coming in here a little bit. I think the maples are starting to bloom.
Yeah, our maples are.
I know that they've been budding, but they haven't popped. I think they're starting to pop some.
Yeah, I was blooming good.
Supposed to be up one day here is coming week. I think Thursday about 70 degrees, and then it's going to be like 30 or 40 on the weekend. It was like it's just a roller coaster ride right now.
But always when you have off, the weather's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, it's supposed to get to 80 this week. It's supposed to be in the high 70s and 80s all week.
I'm kind of anxious to get in them and see. I have like 8 hives that I put those story frames in and see if they started making drone comb and stuff like that.
Have you gotten them to draw any comb out yet?
Well, when I put them story frames in, they had started to make, little patches of comb on it, but not laying in it yet. But that was 2 weeks ago. So I'm kind of anxious. I'm going to try to get them on the next good day and see what they're doing, if they've laid them up and stuff like that. Because I want to use some of them to cut out, and I'm going to open them up and check for mites and see how many mites I still got in some of the hives that are live. Because I know I have mites. I have one that's three deeps. It's a big one that survived it. It did very, very good. I don't read it, but it would fly whenever the other bees were shut down. It would fly like at 45 degrees. They were flying around and being very active, where my other bees were just shut down. And right now it's three deeps. And when I cracked the second and third box to put pollen patties, they already had drone cone in between the boxes. And when I separated that drone cone, I seen mites on the drones. So I know they have some, but they're big, so the mites didn't hurt them yet. But I need to get in there and check and see if I can cut out all the drone cones I put and get some of those mites out of there, because I don't want to put treatments in them right now.
All right,
I had hit them with.
I got to show you this.
Okay. Oh Lord.
They drew all the comb out around it. And
Mhm.
laid brood around it. Hey, she would have laid that brood in that system if you'd have put her in.
She was begging to lay in there, begging. She been laid on the wood. You see there?
Good looking frame though.
Yeah, that's a good frame.
Now
That almost looks like those frames Richard Noel uses to cage his queens.
So, Brad, did you you know, I sent you those acorn frames last year.
Mm-hmm.
Did you re-wax those, or did you just put them straight in?
No, I'm pretty sure I re-wax them. I usually wax all my frames over again.
Because I'm like the only one that didn't, and I'm going through painting all these supers and everything, and now I'm seeing all of the frames that are all dirty, that don't have any comb drawn on them, and now I'm like, man, I got to pull all them off and re-wax them all.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So I don't know.
I only wax as I need. You know, I'll keep a couple of boxes waxed. I don't wax them all when because they say it's not good if you don't use them this season. You wax them again next year, so I just wax them as I need them.
Well, I haven't ever before this year. I haven't ever put any wax on them. I just because I bought them waxed, I put that wax in there, and that's what they used. And and they did okay. You know, they did okay, but then you still get the ones they don't work on as well. So,
I don't buy the like double and triple wax. I just buy the regular ones and wax them myself, and I just put a lot on there.
Right. Yeah, I didn't. Matter of fact, I didn't put any dry sugar on. I started my feeding for the spring and the fall, right? So I'm answering Michael Buck's statement here. So last year when the Apis came in, I was putting it out to them heavily to try to get those numbers heavy going into winter, right? Our pseudo winter, whatever you want to call it down here. So they would have a greater chance to make it. And I still didn't have all my colonies didn't make it. But the ones that did are doing pretty good. You know what I mean? So I open fed all the way as long as they would take it. And I didn't buy regular sugar because that to me, after doing it last year, and watching Sam, my mentor, do it every year, I also get some of the things that you guys don't see on videos when I'm over there in his yard, right? I see the amount of sugar that's in the bottom board of the colony, doing the mountain camp method where they've eaten through it and it falls down to the bottom and he's got an inch of sugar at the bottom of his bottom board. So I get to see some of that stuff. The sugar bricks, if it were colder here for a long period of time, I could see it. But I just kind of changed my mind last fall that it doesn't get cold enough long enough to stop them from being able to get out. And then if they can get out and I can feed them during those periods that they can't find anything, well, then they're foraging and they're still bringing it in, right? So that's just what I did this year. And it seemed to work, seemed to help them out. So now the next question is, how long do I leave these on the double screen bottom board? And we talked about that. First time I've done a vertical split with a double screen bottom board. So now one's got a queen back in it. So I guess let her lay some eggs up and then move her.
Well, I would make sure she has enough bees to keep what she lays up, because once she loses that heat, I had a problem with that because I did the double screen board. I moved them too early and they cannibalized what they couldn't keep warm, because she had laid up a big old pattern. And when I moved them off, the pattern shrunk down to hardly anything because there wasn't a lot of bees in the box. Keeping them over where they can keep the heat keeps her, I think, laying more and keeps them keeping them alive more. To
Randy
where
says
if
4
you
weeks.
move them and they get cold, she's not going to keep that big.
All right, so I got to leave her on there 4 more weeks. So that's 1 full brood cycle. And then she gets to lay up some more.
Yeah, I'll give you a hatch out.
Well, you got to get how many frames of worker bees do you got right now, you figure?
In that colony, probably 4 medium.
4 mediums.
And then honey, some honey. But the brood is right over the 2 holes in the bottom, right?
Well, and then Brad is right on the spot there with that heat there. That's why it's right where it is. So
hello.
So
I wouldn't move her until her brood started to hatch out. Now, when that box up top is starting to get full, and you would add another one, I would split her then.
Okay, so the biggest issue I have is I really haven't done an inspection too much on what's underneath her right now, right?
So
because that queen's still been kicking it the whole time.
Lift her off with the screen board, set her aside, and do your inspection.
And don't think I won't lift her up and do a split underneath her and have a double. I'll have 3 colonies stacked up in the same spot.
That's what got you in trouble last year.
No, making weak splits early got me in trouble. But we made a proper split and let the bees decide how many bees they needed to keep their brood warm.
Correct.
So that's the difference between what we've done this year and what I did last year. And by this time last year, I already had 10 nukes split out, and I've only really done the 2 vertical splits, right? And then, some other funky craziness that I did, but we won't talk about that. Moving the queen out of my poly nuke, that was going to be my queen starter, my starter finisher. That's now its own colony, and the colony that queen that got moved out of is now making a queen. Yeah, you gotta. My thing is, I'm like that. That's the mentality I went with last year, right? Not Michael was, hey, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst that can happen is you start with 12 colonies. You do 10 3-frame splits. Well, that's 30 frames of bees, right? 30 frames of brood and bees. That's 3 single deeps. So I effectively wiped out 30% of my colonies before the spring ever got rolling good. That's what to be afraid of. So just, I'm just telling you from my experience, don't do what I did, because it's going to bite me. See, I can wait 3 more weeks. As long as they don't swarm, I'm in a good shape to make splits then, because that's one more whole brood cycle, right? So if she's laying 2,000 eggs a day, every day 2,000 are hatching out. It should be a much bigger colony in 3 weeks, and I should be able to make much healthier splits. Unless I'm missing something. Is that what you're thinking, James?
That's what I would say. Yeah.
So but what Sam does works for Sam, and the reason it works for Sam is because 90% of Sam's colonies are 5-frame nukes. He's got a few 8-framers, but the majority of his colonies are 5-frame nukes. So he manages his colonies a bit differently than what we do because he's trying to sell nukes early. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a different process.
It's also a 5-frame nuke.
It's a 5-frame nuke, yeah. So
and then the heat resources are different and everything else. So welcome, LaGrange bees. I can't hear you. You're muted.
No, it's not showing muted. His mic's just not working at the moment.
Is your mic on?
But
I think they're catching us at the border.
Huh?
They're catching y'all at the border tonight?
Yeah, they're not letting us through the border.
Is LaGrange from Canada?
He's from Quebec.
From where? Quebec?
Quebec. Well, we say Quebec. They say Quebec or Quebec, right? Quebec. Is he getting it? You getting it ironed out, LaGrange? But
it's because he's not in a onesie.
He probably just popped up, fix it, and pop back in. But I mean, hey, Michael. I've got some like that as well. Some of my 10 framers are not as strong as my other 10 framers. So I definitely learned the difference between a Carniolan and an Italian this season. So I don't know what type of bees you run, but my Carnies, for the most part, are weaker than my Italians. And thanks to James for that whole lesson. He's like, get rid of one of them. Either keep all Carnies or keep all Italians.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to manage all the bees the same when they're not.
Yeah, when they're not the same.
So you've been working on woodenware, James?
Yeah, actually a really good weekend. So today I had my wife out there with me most of the day, and we completely got all of the covers completed. So all of the boxes are done, all of the pallets are done, all of the covers are now done. So I'll be moving on to waxing foundation and building frames.
So when you're waxing foundation, you just use a paint roller?
That's correct. Yep, exactly. Roll it on, flip it over, roll it again.
And would it be better if you had a dip tank where you just dip the whole sheet down in there and bring it back up? Would that
I've never tried that, but I know that's what Mr. Ed does. And
also what Phil does.
Okay, there you go.
But I think I don't know if it uses any less wax either way.
Well, I think it would
does it fill
more wax if you dipped them.
Does it fill up the cells? You know, that's my problem. When I used to wax my foundation, I put too much on there and it would fill the cells up.
I don't know if you can put too much on. I know Brad, I know he waxes them really, really heavy. So, but I don't put quite as much wax on. But yeah, I've really had no problems. And of course, this year I've got the 300 frames of a foundation that was supplied to me that we're not going to wax. We're going to do the, we're going to put it in. We're going to see what happens.
Well, I rendered that wax from the cutout last night, most of it. And I did something differently this time than I usually was ruining a bunch of strainers and stuff trying to scoop out the slum gum as it's heated. Totally not the way to do it. I learned the 5-gallon bucket paint strainer is your friend. So when you go to, if you put that 5-gallon paint strainer into a 5-gallon bucket and then you pour that hot wax and slum gum and everything in there, then you just pick up the strainer. All the slum gum is trapped in the 5-gallon paint strainer. And you take that to another bucket, set it in there, and let it cool down. You'll get your cake of wax on the top and no slum gum in it. So that worked.
Did you put a little bit of water in the bottom of the bucket?
Oh yeah. So, well, I melted the wax in water.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I just dumped it all in, and the wax rises to the top, and you'll get a little bit of like pollen residual underneath the bottom of that wax, but it was so easy to get the slum gum out, and I didn't ruin any of kitchen utensils trying to get it out of there, like the wok strainer or something like that, trying to get the slum gum out.
If you've got a solar melter too,
I do, yeah.
That slum gum in that solar melter, and you'll be surprised how much more wax you get out of it.
Yeah, I've got the solar. Matter of fact, Brad's got a solar wax melter too.
Yep.
He wins all the big prizes on the stream.
Yeah, I love that thing, man. I got like 3 or 4 blocks of clean wax that didn't have to be restrained or anything. I mean, it came out perfectly clean.
That's a good $200 investment. Especially, even like the last few days when it's getting in the 70s, close to 80s, mid 70s, it'll start melting the wax down in there.
Yeah, I'm fixing to put it back out, and because I got a bunch of burr comb and stuff I scraped off.
I took the 2 5-gallon buckets of like kind of covered honeycomb. It wasn't honeycomb, but it was comb that was covered in honey from being in the totes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had taken it and put it in 2 5-gallon pails and set it out by my open feeders to let the bees clean off. And then once they're done cleaning it off, I'll just go ahead and chuck it in the solar melter there and melt it on down.
It's amazing how they can get down to the bottom of that bucket with all that wax pile. They like little pigs rooting in there, and they just get all the way. They'll clean it all out.
Well, welcome
Sorry
back.
about that.
Oh, no problem. You got it fixed up.
Yeah, I tried using a plug-in mic, and in the work I had to use the camera one.
The camera mic works pretty good. It sounds good.
Good.
And so then I think it was Darren. What's Darren's channel there, Charlie?
Darren?
Gosh, I haven't seen, he's up north there.
Okay, define north.
Not as far north as you. North in the United States. He's a YouTuber. He's got a ton of people, and I learned his name was Darren, and I started calling him Darren, and now I forgot his YouTube channel name.
What state's he in?
He's got a ton of subscribers too. Lee, you'll know it. Hey, Lee, Jerome Farms.
Jerome's Bee Farm.
Yeah, so
he's out in Oklahoma or someplace out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it snows, so it's north for me. And I saw him, I think, do the BT one time, and that's what I did with the water off of the wax rendering, right? So the old comb had pollen in it, and obviously honey residual and stuff like that. And then once you use that 5-gallon paint strainer that I was talking to Tim about yesterday and pull all that slum gum right off the top of that wax like nobody's business, once it cooled down and got that disc off the top, well, then all you've got is honey water and pollen mixed up in there, right? It's brown. Looks like coffee almost. But I just mixed syrup in it, put some apis in it, dumped it in my open feeder with the pollen and everything in it, and they went crazy on it. So give it back to them. And they had their tea with honey this morning.
Got my hands on some Apis biologics. I can't wait to try it.
Did you you get it from Dancing Bee?
Yep.
You could have also ordered it directly from Apis. They're in.
Yeah, they were.
They're near you, actually.
Yeah, they were short one of them, so I had to order from Dancing Bee.
Oh, okay. I will try
Is Dancing Bee, they from Canada?
Yes.
They are, yep.
Okay.
The BT.
What part of Canada are you from, LaGrange?
Quebec.
Quebec. Okay.
James is out in Grand Prairie, Alberta.
You got it. You finally got it. Not Edmonton.
I always want to say Edmonton, Alberta, for some reason.
Well, that's the closest big city, but
how many hives you got in range?
I'm about 45 minutes north of Montreal in a small city called Saint Jerome.
Yeah, but how many beehives you got?
Me, 15 right now.
Okay.
And last I checked, I went on Saturday. They were all alive. One of them is pretty weak, but there was heat in the hive, so they're still hanging on. I give them a pound of fondant. See what happens.
Right. I know it was in my nukes. I got one I've been watching, and I finally went through it. It was a 5/5. I what do you call it? Downsized it to one nuke, but I couldn't find the queeners. I think they're queenless and they're starting to dwindle. You know.
You
don't have any kind of brood yet?
I haven't been in them. It hasn't been warm enough to really get into them. It was supposedly like 52 degrees here Sunday. It was relatively warm, but breezy. And I've been putting fondant on my nukes to get them. They seem to be eating more than what my 10 framers were. And then my 10 framers have at least 6 to 8 frames of honey. But I pulled a couple of those frames up to kind of check the food sources. But they're like Jose's. If you've seen his, they're just solidly covered with bees on top of the frames.
That video Jose put up today, that was in January.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, my top of my 10 framers look like his 10 framers with the bees in there. Now my nukes, most of them are pretty good population and everything. So we'll see. I don't know. Thursday it's supposed to be 70 degrees. Then of course by Sunday it'll be back down to 40 degrees. So
hey guys,
it's a roller coaster.
Since we have a Hannah on the stream tonight, we got to say happy birthday to her. Her birthday was the other day. And she had
well, happy birthday.
You guys see that temperature?
Yeah, negative
22.
Oh, no, thank you.
30.
Negative 30.
That's Celsius, right?
That's all Celsius. Yep.
You see
Switch
that right there. That right there is why most Cajuns left Canada and came back to Louisiana.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
We moved up there for a little while and then said, heck no, it's time to go back.
All right. Somebody I saw in the comment was asking about the Apis. So if you don't know about Apis, everybody here pretty much does because I've talked to it till they're about to throw up. But it mimics. I don't even want to say mimic because what it does is gives you the nutrition that's in floral nectar, and it allows you to add that to your liquid feed.
The micro minerals and supplements that you would find in nectar are in that package to add to your sugar water to provide as close to a nectar source, an artificial nectar source
That
as
is possible.
science has allowed us right now.
And the activator does basically the same thing, but for the pollen, right? Pollen sub liquid feed. So, but as far as gut health, being in South Carolina, I've never had to worry about my bees' gut health because they can get out so regularly to use the restroom that it's not an issue.
I'm sure all my girls are cross-eyed by now.
Oh, I'm sure. Cross-legged, cross-eyed, everything. Well, expenses relative, right? So for $59.99, you can make 265 gallons of liquid feed. So not expensive at all when you put it in that perspective compared to some of the other things on the market. For the pollen supplement one, it's $19.99. And for the smaller control that does 52 gallons is $24.99. So there you go. And you can find it on where? My website. Yay! So now everybody knows.
I've been using it for a couple of years now, and what a difference! Actually, last year I did anybody who's watched my channel or been on here, I literally did a comparison on the same apiary. I did half my hives using Apis and half the hives using just straight sugar water. And after about 2 weeks, I said that was absolutely crazy. At the end of the third week, they all got Apis because the hives were so different. The ones with Apis were up here. The ones without it are down here. Like just an absolute huge difference. And I thought, why am I doing this? So they all ended up getting it.
So did you find there was more brood frames, James?
More brood frames. They were building up faster. The queens were laying more. They're just everything was better. You know?
Yeah, because I put I guess about 80 gallons of that on my hives, and I found that most of the hives. So this is going into the fall. There was like 3 to 4 brood frames per hive. Like 10 framers. Yep. More so that where you would have only one brood frame if you didn't. And all because I had a friend of mine up the road and he didn't have it. He didn't know what it was. And I said, well, he said he was asking about how much brood. I said, well, I got to average of 3, maybe 4 frames per hive. And he said, I can barely find one, so anyway, I said, well, sounds like my stuff is working then.
Yeah, I used it the first, like when I first started feeding the bees in the fall, and then I stopped and then just straight back to sugar water. So, but everything in the spring gets it. So everything I mix up gets the Apis in it in the spring.
Well, Michael, I dropped the link to the website if you're looking for it. If not, don't worry about it. Whatever you want to do, I've got it if you need it. I'm like the
I
dealer.
thought you got rid of that big cartel.
I did, but everybody says the link doesn't work for them when I use the shortened link. It works for me every time.
It goes to big cartel all the time.
Well, yes, okay. So the big cartel is the name of the actual website, right? The actual web server website. The shortened link is just that. It's just a short link that you can click that redirects you to the actual store. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so when you click it, it'll always pop up and say bewares.bigcartel.com because that's where it's sending you to. But it's just the easier, quicker typed out method. Yeah. So, Tim and Hannah, what you guys been doing down there?
We're taking it easy today. We did get out in the bees for a little bit and just re-up on their peppermints.
Check on that split we made.
Yeah, that split. We had that one queen cell we dropped in there. Done that a little bit. And we opening it up today, just kind of nosing around. And
when you say drop the queen cell in, did you cut one off of one frame and put it in there?
Okay.
Let me correct that. There was a queen cell on the frame.
Okay.
And
Oh, you took a whole
we
frame over.
just taken,
Yeah,
the
we
whole
just
frame.
made a split with that frame. But when we got in there today, they had another queen cell and another cup they were starting all in that one little nuke. I was like, well,
It's
here we
insurance.
go.
It's insurance for them, right?
Yeah, we'll just let them go.
Did I see you put a video out where you're hanging some swarm traps in was it an almond grove or something?
No,
Or
orchard.
huh?
A pecan orchard.
Yeah,
Up at my
pecan. That's one.
grandma's. Mhm.
Okay.
It depends what
Yeah.
part of the South you are. Some people say pecan and some people say pecan.
Let me clarify that.
A pecan is what you put in the floor so you don't have to go to the outhouse at night.
That's it. And a pecan is something you eat.
Yeah. No, only the people that migrate down here from the northern states call them pecans.
But we do know what y'all talking about. So
Yeah. We hear it a lot.
yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah, we've been
Well,
wanting to get up there a couple of years and put a couple traps out, but we finally went on and done it this year.
Oh, we see bees up there all the time because my grandma's she's got so much stuff planted out there in the yard. There's all kinds of flowers, bushes, and trees and stuff. So just give it a shot and see what happens. Since we had some really cool new swarm lure to use in there.
Larry Moore
Tested
says,
and real.
we call them pecans. You pee in a chamber pot. Only if you're uptown, brother. Uptown. Those are the wealthy people have chamber pots. My dad and them had like a what was not what's that coffee can that's like something brothers, right?
Hill and Brook.
Hill Brothers or Hill something.
Hill Brothers.
Hill Brothers coffee can. That's what they had. Our pecans are not blooming yet, Dennis says.
Pecan trees are the last thing to bloom around here.
The
hurricanes that put ours in a bind, or her grandma's up there in a bind. The last several years, we've had 2 or 3 hurricanes pretty much back to back down through here. And when them hurricanes come in, they put them pecans in stress for a year or so.
Now, those trees, are they the little dwarf trees? The small ones?
No, sir. These
Yeah,
guys
I've been when I go down there to Hardeman's to get beans down there in Georgia, they'll have the original pecan trees where they're great big trees, like huge, like a normal sized tree. And then they got these new groves down there where they have I guess it's a modified tree where it's sort of like an apple tree. It's kind of low and small.
Those are usually like your paper mache trees, and they bred that way so that they can shake them.
Shake them, yeah.
Yeah,
but they're small. But
they can't.
Little round
trees. That one tree that y'all had out there, that big old huge giant tree. You ain't shaking that tree.
No,
Now, some of them trees out there are probably 40, 60 feet tall. They're
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, because you go down there on one side, it'd be a grove of trees that are, they're as tall as a big oak tree or whatever. Very big tree.
Yeah. Hurricanes tear them suckers up.
And then there's the new grove they've been planting, I'll say 2 or 3 years ago. And they're like kind of like an apple orchard tree. They might be 16 feet tall, but they're kind of like a rounded bush tree. And like you say, they can go around with a thing that shakes them or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, around here, you wait for the squirrels to cut them or wait for them to fall and get out there and get to picking them up.
I was going to say, we were the pickers when we were growing up.
Yeah, when me and my brother were young, that used to be our church fair money. we go out and pick the pecans. We'd be throwing sticks in the tree, peeling them green and everything else to go and sell them so we can go play the games at the church fair.
Yeah. We
Y'all
never
didn't
got
just wait for them to fall on the ground and pick them up off the ground?
Well, it depends when the church fair was. if Father made it a week or two too early, then they didn't fall to the ground. You had to knock them out of the tree.
That's funny. And paper show here at the house.
Yeah. We excited. It's getting season, y'all. It ain't gonna be long for everybody's gonna be
Tell you
getting
what,
it.
I actually felt like a beekeeper out there today. New queens, marking new queens, and moving cells to other colonies, and it almost felt like it's on.
Well, yeah, it won't be long. Charlie will be talking about single brood.
Chamber management.
Single brood.
That
chamber
and the
management.
next thing I'm gonna do is this here demery method where you cycle the brood up to the top and around. I'm gonna see how that works.
Are you gonna do one, Bob?
I don't know. Right now, I'm look at James. Right now, I'm content with letting them get as fat in the colony as they can get, and then split them when I have to split them.
Let me see that cat. All right, cool.
Must be treat
it's
time.
like Sylvester.
No, it just he like curl up on my lap in front of the fireplace. It's nice and warm.
And
well, the main thing, I mean, the way I'm going to do it is pretty much like single brood chamber management, and go into the bottom box and equalize the brood out of it, but not the way Bob was doing it. And the way I researched, there's a lot of guys that stated the way Bob did it, where they pulling everything out of the bottom. And to me, that's it just shocks the hive too much. You got to just manage the brood population.
well, see, now you're doing it for two different reasons, right? What you're doing it for and what I was doing it for are two entirely different things, right? You're doing it as a basic brood builder, right?
Brood builder, honey producer. I can double my honey production.
Okay, so here's another option for you, Charlie, without doing that.
And then
and it's called double brood chamber management.
Been there, done that, and it don't work.
There's also the brood factory that Michael Palmer uses. I made one last summer, and it's going to be ready for this season.
The only thing I don't like about that, in all honesty, I've got enough different size boxes and crap everywhere that
We're getting through to you, Bob.
Yeah, so to build a brood factory, I would have to get now 2 4-frame nukes, right? And so it's just more specialized equipment.
You don't need specialized for a brood factory. A brood factory can be just a
right, but
5-frame
he's
nuke.
saying the Michael Palmer method is a 10-frame with 2 4-frame nukes on it.
Is that what you're talking about there, Lorraine?
I don't know back here what they call it officially. I just watched a Michael Palmer video back when I first started. And when I bought my first hives, I got one. It was a double, like a double nuke with 4-frame boxes that I could put on top.
On top of it, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a 10-frame deep that's split down the middle with a divider, and then you put your supers on top, which hold 4 frames and keep on going up. It's
I mean, I have it, so I may as well use it.
Oh yeah, it's a good setup. The idea behind his setup is where his environment was. It was very cold, and you got 2 nukes, and they're side by side. They share the wall, the heat, and the wall in the center, and of course the brood goes straight up the 4-frame boxes, and he can continue. You know, it'll make lots of brood.
Yeah,
it's
the same similar weather condition that as those in Vermont. So I'm going to figure when I first started, I figured might as well try it. My first year didn't
it
go
works.
very well, but that's another story.
It works. I got Amir that lives across town from me. He runs 2 of them, and he swears by them. And I didn't go down that route when I started. So at this point, not to say it wouldn't be useful, but I've got 20 other brood factories sitting out there. I could just pull a frame, boom, and drop a frame in. And guess what? The queen will come back and lay in that one. And a couple weeks, I can come back and pull a frame out and put another frame in, and keep doing that over and over again too, right? So, as long as you keep that mother colony strong, right, James? As long as you keep it strong,
you're learning.
it's
I'm
thick,
impressed.
but it
We're
sinks in
slowly getting
eventually.
to you.
Oh, that's true. I mean, and it's like Brian has 7 of them and everything, and it's true. I mean, I run 5 frame, single deep nukes where I have 5/5, and you're condensing the hive down on the 5 frames, and which is more efficient for the bees to keep warm, and they can lay up brood. And then you've got that thermal column where they'll go straight up, just the same way. If you look in your 10 frame hives, where do they build brood and food? And the brood it's always a 6 frames in the middle, and it's going straight up, and then they kind of branch out a little bit. They don't go, what would you say, horizontally as easy as they will go vertically, and that kind of thing.
Well, on your nukes though, how many frames of brood do they have going up?
Well, they have at least 4, probably 3 to 4 frames, depending. And they don't.
I almost never in a nuke get more than about 3 frames, like right in the center, and then there's usually food on the outside. So the only way I can change that is put another box on top, pull one up, right? So they come up in that next box. Now she'll lay on those 3 in the center, and basically honey on the sides again. I have not been successful just getting her to slam the whole box full of brood like that.
Our 6 frame nuke boxes are 6 frames. They're full. I mean, that's part of what we do, is that way we limit the amount that queen can lay. That way she's ready for early spring next year. So those 6 frame nukes, we'll make those things up. She'll have those things. She'll have brood on every frame.
Something sorry.
Go ahead.
Something I tried this summer that I really liked are Gus Mitchell's flyback split. They work very well. And the hive that ends up with mostly empty frames rebuilds pretty quick. But they do get very defensive because they essentially lose everything except 2 frames. So don't do what I did. Don't open the box until they're well established. Otherwise, they'll jump down your throat.
So the flyback split, you're basically putting 2 frames in there and then shaking them out and letting the bees fly back.
What you do is the box you want to split, you take 8 frames out, and you let the foragers fly back in it. They find that everything's gone except 2 frames and the queen, and they go in freak out mode and start building really, really fast. And the 8 frames that are left, you just put them in another box somewhere else, and they make a ton of queen cell because all that's left is nurse bees. It works very well. I got a lot of cell out of that.
You guys get my head spinning too much, man. I'm gonna be like, James will be like, now Bob, stay the path.
Stick to the plan.
See, James is like my Mandalorian. If you've watched The Mandalorian, and it's like, this is the way. And I'm like, okay,
So
James.
you like a little green-eared fella?
Yeah, I'm like a Grogu, baby Jedi, baby Yoda.
Well, I'm a new beekeeper. I like trying new stuff, find out what works for me.
Yep, I mean, it is, and I feel like I've tried a lot of different things, and I don't feel like I'm personally where I feel I should be with my bees. because of me, right? The only equation, the bees are going to do the bees. The only thing that can be ruining that equation is me.
We call that the Bob factor.
The Bob factor. So, in Brad's case, it would be the Brad factor or whatever. We all do dumb stuff, and part of. And hey, guys, if you watched my live earlier, I did go on a rant, right? Because people, especially on YouTube, we open ourselves up when we put videos and stuff out there, and people are very quick to tell you how you suck and what you've done wrong and stuff like that, right? But at the same time, very rarely when those people that are chastising you like that, if you go to their channel, you're like, well, this guy must have a better way to show me how to do it. And you go to their channel, they never have any content. They never have any subscribers, right? There's none of that. So I understand that everything I do is not correct. But you guys don't always get everything that has happened, right? So like
my wife's giving me a hard time for saying that's the Bob factor.
Oh, it is though. In my case, it is the Bob factor, right? and knowing that, right? I know that I don't do things 100% correct. I mean, I got roasted pretty much about dumping the bees from the bee vac into the bottom box, right? And then putting the frames on top to let the bees come up into the frames. And what most people don't know is I've got beekeepers on speed dial on here, like Dirt Rooster and Mr. Ed and, James. And I don't have Ian, but I get Ian on Facebook Messenger pretty quick, So it's not like when I do something, if I don't know or I'm not sure, I pick up the phone and I call these guys and I say, hey, this is what I've got. What should I do? And, I get roasted. Well, you need to go watch Dirt Rooster's video because Dirt Rooster always puts that empty box on top and pours it in. And I called Dirt Rooster up today and I said, hey, Randy, correct me. Did I misunderstand you? But you did tell me to put that empty box on the bottom and pour the bees in and let them come up to the frames. He says, yeah, that's what I told you to do. I said, okay, I was just making sure I heard you correctly because I just got roasted about not putting the empty box on top and using it as a funnel. He says, well, that person must have been watching my old videos because that's how I used to do it. But he said, when you're doing a vacuum out or in a cutout, there are lots of dead bees that just happen. So the reason you put them on the bottom is so the dead bees stay on the bottom and the live bees can crawl up and get on the frames. And so I've been doing it like that for the last couple of years. So so I'm getting,
just do it your way.
I'm getting
that's what most people don't quite understand. I mean, I get guys on my channel there actually sending me messages all the time, and I leave them there, and I leave the messages there. I mean, I can just easily hit delete, but I leave them there. Just for just to be transparent. But what works for me isn't going to work for Bob. Most likely won't work for Charlie. I'm not sure if it'll work for Tim and Hannah. I have no idea. I have no idea what your guys' area is.
Well, I mean, a perfect example is we were talking about single brood chamber management.
Absolutely.
And there were several big key points where what James does won't work. Well, necessarily won't work in the same order because number one, my honey crop comes in 3 months sooner. His comes in later, and
for a shorter period.
Yeah, and it's in June. And your honey crop comes in June. Mine's in April through mom ending in June.
Yeah.
And it also has, you got June 21st with the summer solstice, and that is a big power play because of the numbers of hours of daylight. And depending on how your crop comes in, whether it's really hard and fast coming in.
Yeah, if I don't have my hives ready to go by the solstice, I'm going to miss out a good portion of it.
Right. So what I'm getting at is you have to work your hives to it's all about your environment, where you're located. And that's something you as the beekeeper has to kind of learn yourself. When it comes in, when it stops, when your dearth is. It was like I was asking one guy about how do you get your bees down in one box, and I asked him, and here where I live, it's July and August is the dearth. I said, do you take and feed your bees? No, I don't feed my bees. Oh, okay. So your bees shut down in egg laying production because there's no food coming in. And of course, the cluster just shrinks up, and you can get them in one box, a deep box. Whereas my way of keeping bees is I'm going to feed that hive, let's say, a gallon of sugar water for just 1 gallon will get them through the next couple months. And they won't stop laying. I want a nice big cluster to go into fall and all that. So it's all those different points that you have to put together to figure out how it's going to work for you.
Exactly. So here's the secret.
When are you dropping them to one box?
Well, the other guys were dropping for one box to go through the winter like that, where they just do they keep them only in a single deep throughout their whole. They go into the honey flow, they put the queen excluder on, they put honey boxes on top. And that's what James does.
Correct.
But when right now he has hives in his winter barn. They're not in double deeps. They're in a single deep. Now he does have a 6-inch food medium with a food shim. And now Brad, who comes on here, doesn't even have that. He just has single deep, just like Ian Stepler.
Brad and Ian keep laughing at me. They're like, you'll learn.
Well, it's true. You're
absolutely true.
You're going into it cautiously, and then you will learn how to feed your hive so you can put it in the bee barn and keep it at a certain temperature and all that.
Well, they're pretty sure I'm going to pull my bees out of the barn, and they're pretty sure I'm going to find that I have oodles and oodles and oodles of food reserves. And I did think about that last year when I put them in there. I'm okay with that. That is my insurance, if you will.
Yeah.
Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Well, if you guys watch Ian's videos last year, I didn't want to be in a predicament where you got bees that are starving out in the shed because of a real crappy spring, But where I was going to say is whether you use single brood chamber management, whether you put them into winter into a barn, regardless as to how you want to do your splits, how you want to doing, most of mine are carnies, but how you want to do it, the fundamentals are what you have to learn and understand, because the fundamentals are the same for me as they are for Tim and Hannah, as they are for Charlie, as they are for Brad. Those fundamentals, once you understand those fundamentals and you understand how you can manipulate those, that's where you're going to be successful.
In my area, the flow is pretty much nonstop from, say, end of April till maybe October. But it's when the basswood hits, it gets insane. The bees last year, I had 2 hives in production, and each hive drew and filled 2 supers each during the 2 weeks of basswood. It's crazy.
Now, did they drawed the wax out, they filled it with nectar. They weren't capped by that time, right?
No. But
okay. What I'm getting at is
after 3 weeks,
maybe you could have put a 3rd box on her. I was just wondering whether or not they would have drawn it. There was still enough flow.
Oh, I did. It was the third one was partially drawn.
Okay.
Well, here's a good topic that we haven't really talked about, and I'm running into it this year already. It's confusion on my behalf. So, yeah. Well, hey, I'll put my confusion out there if it helps somebody else, right? So, here's the thing. So I have comb, right? I have some comb.
You lucky potlicker.
But I don't have enough comb, right? And everything that we've talked about so far, James, has been, well, give them some comb. But at what point do I need to start saying, well, I need to give them some foundation so they can start drawing that new foundation out? And it's more about resource management of my comb versus foundation. So is there a secret sauce to that, or something that you kind of try to go by, or just when you run out of comb, that's when you start putting on foundation? Or
well, as you know, I've been fighting and struggling, and I will for probably the next this season for sure, and probably next season. So I mean, as everybody knows, I got 200 boxes that I need to get drawn comb this year. That is definitely going to affect my honey production. So here's where I go. So I'll take my bees out of the barn. I'll take them out. I'm going to slap 2 pounds of pollen patty on them right away, and I'm going to throw some 1-to-1 sugar water on them probably the day after I pull them out of the bee barn. Here you go. Let's get them kick-started. Let's get them going. I'll watch that, and as that brood starts to hatch out and starts to emerge, she's going to start getting those frames laid up. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit. I do not throw a full bucket of sugar water on there. I want to have enough sugar water to get them going and get them stimulated, but I don't want it to be so much that they're going to plug out that brood chamber. That's key, right? And as soon as she gets those laid up, and as soon as that brood starts hatching out, and the temperature starts to come back up, where I'm not going, I'm going to say +5, +8, say between +5 and +10 degrees Celsius. I'm going to drop a second box on top of them, and I don't have the comb. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a second box on top of them. I'm going to pull one of those frames up that's got open brood, cat brood, stuff like that on it. That's going to act as a, what does Brad call it? Seeding it all, if you will. It's going to pull those nurse bees up. They're going to see that empty comb beside it, and they will start working that comb. And I just kind of got to keep going through and keep doing that. So I'm going to be battling this one for at least this year. I'm thinking I've got 200 boxes this year. I'm thinking I'm going to need at least 400 boxes next year. And none of it's drawn comb. So it's all foundation. So I'm going to make sure I wax it. I've got 300 frames here, of which we're going to do a bit of a test on. But, I've even gone through and I've checker patterned, a few things like that. Everything I can to convince them to draw that comb out. I have shuffled the comb from the outside to the inside, right? As that comb gets drawn, I kind of drop another one in there and then move it all to the outside so that all of that comb gets drawn up. And just kind of, when that gets drawn up and they start filling that, drop another box on, and so on and so forth. Like I say, it does definitely tie into my honey production, though. So I'm not expecting a large honey crop again this year.
See, that's one of the things that I'm struggling with, like right now.
Is your flow on?
Very well, I would say no today, because the way they were hitting the tea, right? The tea I put out there. So it's very light.
I would say as soon as your flow starts to come on, I would probably start looking at dropping in. If you're using foundation, I'd look to start dropping some of the foundation in as soon as your flow starts.
Yeah, we don't
We
don't put any foundation unless the flow's on or you feeding a 1-to-1 sugar.
Right, one or the other.
because
That's why.
they'll just let it sit there, and they won't touch it.
Well, I've got like for instance in the cutout, right? So it's mainly drawn comb, but I put some foundation in there because there's a lot of bees. I put some feed on them and they need something to do. So if they draw it out, then they.
But right back to Brad's point. So either the flow's on or you're feeding them, right? So if you're feeding them, they will have what they need to draw that comb out.
Well,
Yeah.
I tried it. You have to be feeding them very thin syrup, because if you feed thick syrup, they try to store it and they plug out the nest. And so if you're going to build comb, it has to be, very, very thin, because I tried, doing the regular sugar that you buy in the gallons and stuff at the bee stores, and all they did was plug up the nest with it. They wouldn't even build comb with it.
Well, and that goes back to what I was saying. It's important when I put my feed on here in the spring, I don't put a full bucket. I don't, like I said, I don't want them to plug out that brood chamber. I want enough there to stimulate them, to feed the bees, to stimulate them to get that queen laying, and then just provide the, that source for them to get going, to feed those bees and give them the nutrition that they need, right?
That's probably what, Charlie, isn't that what you do since you do single brood? Don't you have to feed thin syrup so they don't plug out your single box?
No, the single brood, it's just like James said, just like them 6-frame nukes. She lays up everything in that box.
Mm-hmm.
She'll lay all 10 frames up. Now, up in the upper corners of the frames, you'll find some pollen and you'll find some honey up there, or nectar, just for quick access to feed the brood. Now, when the honey flows on, they come in and then they put it, they don't have a place to put it here because it's all filled up with eggs or brood. And they'll put everything upstairs. Now, what I will do is I will make sure I've been building my, comb, drawn wax out over several years. I'll definitely put a drawn frame of wax on top of the queen excluder, and they'll go up into that and fill that up. Now, if you are looking to draw wax out on foundation, then I would put a super of foundation, let's say 10 frames. And that way, they'll start drawing that wax out and then filling it too and all. Now, I've tried Cayman's way, where you checkerboard and you might put 2 frames of foundation, let's say either, he said a 9-frame box. And I've tried that, but all I got was they draw a little bit out over here and then they draw the other side way out past the hive. And it just never seemed to work for me. So I said, okay, let's just go back and put a whole box of foundation in 10 frames and let them draw it out. But make sure that you give them a place to put liquid nectar in first, and then they'll go up there and draw it out.
Yeah, unless my comb is drawn, it'll always have 10 frames in a 10-frame box. The only time I'll go down to a 9-frame box is if it's drawn comb and in my honey super.
Right.
Otherwise, I will always have 10 frames in that box. It just, you end up with too much
cross comb.
Cubby wonkus comb, I think is what they call it there. So
cattywampus.
Cattywampus. That's right. That's right.
Well, I mean, if it's in the
Charlie,
in
your 6-frame nuke, you saying she's laying from wall to wall.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing to get her not getting out to store on the outside edges? Because I've done nukes before, up to four deeps high, and they will always put some honey on them outside frames, and they'll go ahead and put brood in the next one right above the 3 frames. And you might have 6 frames of brood in the 2 boxes, but I've never had them just to lay 6 frames of just solid brood.
Now, what James is talking, he's got a 3-way pallet there.
Correct.
And it's 3 6-frame nukes side by side. Then he puts 2 queen excluders on top, and then he puts 2 10-frame
Oh, okay. Okay.
boxes on top of that. So it acts like a single brood chamber management system.
It exactly is. It is.
It is. And then what it is, she lays all that up because that's the only room she has is 6 frames. And there's 3 queens
Okay.
laying at the same time. And then they force them to put the honey upstairs into those. Well, he's using 10-frame deeps because his standard box size is 10 frames across the board.
Correct.
He doesn't run 6-inch mediums.
Okay.
Now, with me on my situation, when I first started out, I lifted up a 10 frame of honey and it's like 100 pounds. I have lower back problems years ago. So I said, nope, this is not for me. So I'm doing the same thing, but all my stuff is completely mediums. I have 3 mediums for overwintering, but I pull a medium out of that and drop down to 2 mediums for my single brood chamber area. Then put a queen excluder on and put honey supers above that in medium boxes. And it's the same principle, but just different size boxes.
I
and more.
resist, Charlie, but if you had a hive lifter,
That's what I need. That's what I need, because what I need to do is pull those honey supers off of one stack, push it back out of the way, go down there and do my manipulation of the brood chamber, and then just lower it right back down. And that's exactly why I want to buy that hive lifter.
You know, I was making more room in the garage.
What do you mean by manipulating?
What I'm doing is I'm equalizing that hive out. I am looking into those brood chambers. Now, if it was a 10 framer, he might have 4 frames of cap brood. I got 2 mediums, so I got 20 frames to look at. So there might be 6 frames of cap brood down there. I'm going to take half of that out of that hive, and I'm going to put drone wax back in, so that gives her more, keeps giving her room to lay. And she's keep constant laying, and you're manipulating the brood, the amount of bee population in that hive. So it's one of the best swarm prevention methods I've ever found. The last 2 years, I haven't had any swarms.
So you don't have any deeps. It's all mediums.
All mediums. But now, if you have deeps, just do your deep queen excluder, and then if you have honey supers that are mediums, put your honey supers on. Now, what I'm going to do this year is a demery, where if you got 2 deeps, like I guess you do, Brad, I put all the brood down in the bottom, all the, the open brood and stuff like that. And let's say she has 4 frames of cap. I would keep 2 frames of cap down there. I would put, let's say, 2 honey supers on, and then I would put that other brood box up top with bees and with cap brood, not open brood, cap brood. You don't, unless you want them to make volunteer queen cells. You know what I mean? If you want, like in your situation, you need splits because you've lost a bunch of hives. So put some eggs up there. Let them make those free queens for you, because she's going to be distant enough where there's not going to be, the pheromones are not going to be passing from bee to bee with their antennas and their mandibular glands, I think it is. She'll make queen cells upstairs, go up there about every 3rd day and see where they're at. And then you can pull them frames out and put them in another box and make a split. Another thing is while you're doing that, let's say you go in there every week and you pull a frame or 2. And if you got, how many hives you got right now that are active? 5, 10?
For me?
Yeah, Brad.
20. I got 20.
20 of them. And didn't you lose 10 hives?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get back up to 30, go across them 10 hives like that, pull a frame of brood out, and then put that up on the brood box. Let's say they make queen cells. Okay, well, now pull the queen cell out on the frame, make your splits, pull some brood out of all these other hives that are populated good. You're reducing the population. You're kind of pulling them back a little bit, but not enough that's going to affect your honey production.
Mhm.
And do a horizontal demery where you're putting those brood frames in a split and letting them grow out that way. And take the frame with the bees along with it. As long as you make sure you keep the queen in the original donor hive. And I mean, this is now the way I do my single without the demery. What I usually do is I pull frames of brood out. If I got a weak hive over here, 2 hives down, I'm going to put those frames of brood with the bees in that hive. And now it's kind of like a Michael Palmer brood bomb where you're boosting them up. So now all your beehives are basically the same strength and they won't swarm. And the big thing about single brood chamber management, it's the management of honey in your brood chamber. You don't want any honey in your brood chamber. You want a little bit of nectar in the corners just for them to feed off of. You want them to store it upstairs out of the way. And that's making sure that 80% of that box is full with nectar. You better be putting on, I would under super, pull that box off, put it empty on. Hopefully it's drawn wax. Put that other super back on, let them cap it over time. And if anything, put another box of just foundation if you ran out of wax. Let's see if they draw some wax out while they're doing all that.
Well, exactly. And every one of my boxes last year that were honey supers, every one of those boxes is going to become wax foundation in my brood chambers this year. And then I'll start all over again, this year. So
yeah.
So wait a minute. You said every one of the combs that you had drawn out. Well, you use all deep. So the deep comb that you had drawn out, you're going to put that into brood chambers on your splits.
Correct.
And then start out with new foundation for your next boxes.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I got
an
an email from the Amazon. Somebody requesting they didn't receive their package. So if they happen to be watching, their address was incomplete. It just had their name and their town, and I didn't catch it on the packet slip. So now they're wanting a free one or an additional lure, right, to replace the one that they messed up putting in their shipping address on. But the only way I can stay good with Amazon is to go ahead and replace it, but they have to update it. So if that happens to be you, the ones that send it, I'll send it, but you got to correct your address in Amazon. So there you go.
There you go.
Business.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've got over 2,000 frames that I got to draw this year, so it'll be fun.
And that's
Isn't that what Mr. Ed does each year? He just draws out for the honey. Then whatever he had the previous year, he dropped down into his brood chambers.
Yeah,
because
he much longer.
He doesn't keep any brood. Like he don't like overwinter brood. He scrapes it and melts it down.
That'd be great, except my season is about half of what his is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, he waxes a couple, like 1,000 or so frames every year, and just puts them in his boxes to draw out for honey.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have that luxury.
Yeah, so Bob, you shouldn't have no problem drawing out, man.
Me?
It ought to go pretty good for you.
Well, now that
Oh, hey, look. That's a pretty good look on Bob.
He can't move his mouth.
Oh my God. That's it, Charlie. You're out of here. I'm just kidding. But but yeah, I mean, so now that I have what I say 11 boxes of drawn comb, then that gives me 25 frame nukes, right? Or 22 5-frame nukes worth of drawn comb when I go to split and move that empty comb into the combs that I'm taking the splits out of. And
well, if you
I got a bunch of drawn comb too. From them 10 dead hives, 10 double deeps.
Yeah, I've got what? See, my honey supers though, I don't have that much drawn comb. So,
No.
and because they're different.
Oh, he froze up
There he
again.
goes again.
Mm-mm.
The big,
Man, he is
the main thing with
one.
Bob, I would say with Bob is if he can get some nukes going, some 5-frame nukes, and he's got a good population down in that bottom box, and he needs a second box, I'd put a whole box of foundation on, and let them bees come up there and draw that wax out. Maybe as long as there's a good flow on, they'll draw all that stuff out for you while you're not. You can have your honey production hives over here, and you can have your nukes, and they could be drawing wax out for you, maybe filling them up with nectar at the same time.
Oh, Hope asked a question about single brood chamber management.
Yeah.
In SBM, when the flow starts in a 10 frame, do you pull the honey and pollen frames out so she has 10 frames to lay in? The pollen frames could be used in splits, I assume. Well, you're going to want to leave some for her brood, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You got it.
But
Well, I mean, there's not going to be there's going to be a small amount of pollen in there and a small amount of nectar.
You don't just move it up.
No, I mean, you
got two mediums. You don't put your feed in the upper medium and just leave.
Well, there's no feed in that medium. That's the thing about a single brood chamber management. You don't want no feed in there. You don't want them to you're trying to alleviate them from backfilling anything in that brood chamber. You want her to fill up everything with brood and eggs.
And part of the key with that, what Charlie's trying to do there is if you do it properly, as they're hatching out, she will lay it back up. So that's the key, is to have that chamber managed in such a way so that she is laying at the same speed as which they're hatching. That keeps it consistent and it keeps it always going. And she'll be going.
But don't you think you have to have the right queen for that too? Because if you have a lazy queen, they can backfill.
That's where you give her the hive tool test.
Yeah, you pinch her off and replace her. I don't, like I said, I don't have a whole lot of time for a lazy queen or a slow queen.
Yeah,
my season's too short. I'll requeen her. I will be further ahead if I pinch her off and replace her with a virgin. I would be further ahead than letting her continue to go.
You can afford to use virgins in that short season?
I graft all my own queens, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
so do you have any do you have any just matings from?
Well, I have that's where the nukes come in. That's where these little nukes and stuff like that come in.
He's got the same setup as Ian does, Brad.
So
he's got those three nukes side by side, and that's his mating boxes, and that's where he's growing them queens.
Right.
And then he switches over to a 10-frame box for his honey production.
Whose channel? I think it was.
How many of those?
Your channel, Charlie, that we were on when I was out in the bee barn there, right?
Yeah. It was. What was it? Sunday night or Friday night?
You say you saw what I plugged in and started to turn up, right?
Yep.
So I plugged in my drone hives, and I'm starting to crank them up. And
he's got a special hive, Brad. I'm not quite sure. It's heaters to heat up the hive so they make more production on the drone frame.
Bug farmers heaters.
They're the bug farmers heaters.
Oh, okay.
I use that.
Yeah.
So most of that, we're trying to work it out. So I think I'm going to pull another frame or so out of it. But most of the comb in there is drone comb. I'm going to say over 50% of the comb in there is drone comb. So I've plugged her in. Every week I'm going to turn her up 5 degrees now. And probably I'm going to say within the next week or two, as soon as we get out of this next cold snap, she's coming back here to the backyard so that they can get out and start flying. And I will start feeding her. So she lays all of the workers up, and she'll start laying the drones up as well. So I've got drones in a hive before the snow is gone.
What percentage of nukes to your hives do you keep for like replacing queens?
Well, that's something I just learned down at Hive Life. Actually, I was trying to figure out how Ian did it, and basically what I'm looking for is about 30%. So that's part of the woodware that I've been building here, and actually that's what we built today. So today we made lids for 30 more 6-frame nukes. So I'll have 30% nukes. Basic. Ian calls it his battery. I like that. I like that concept. And I'm going to try and replicate that, as best I can. And that way I've always got something to fill in.
What kind of wood thickness do you use to make your 6-frame nukes, or do you buy them outright?
He's got that Canadian boxes up there.
Canadian 7/8.
7/8 US.
That's metric.
Oh, you missed it, Lorraine. These, 7/8 is the long story short. But I have to give Bob and Charlie a hard time because they were trying to figure out how to get these. Actually, more so, I think it was Bob. They were trying to figure out how to get the frames to match out, and they couldn't quite figure out what 7/8 Canadian would be in American.
Where you got the wood? I'm sorry. What, like
they're 11 inches wide.
Plywood that's 7/8, or you buy planks that are that thickness.
Actually, I buy the nuke boxes from Lewis and Sons.
Okay.
Last year, what I did is I actually I took basically full frame or full boxes, deep boxes, and I cut them down myself to make it. So the outside to outside measurement on a 6-frame nuke is 11 inches.
Thank you.
That's why that 6-frame or that triple pallet works, is because it is 7/8 wood or thickness of the lumber, and it's also 6-frame. Which
Correct.
American nukes most of the time are 5-frame. And that's how, when you put it on that pallet, between the thickness of the board, the 6-frame nukes side by side, that's how the 10-frame deeps all work out perfectly, which is not, most people don't know that, especially us down here in the U.S. and everything.
It doesn't work out with 3/4-inch boxes. So it would if you made, well, no, actually it wouldn't, because you'd have extra room inside your boxes. So.
Yeah, and all, but I will have to say I've got a licensed 6-frame nuke, polystyrene, and that extra frame in there does a major difference as far as the size of the cluster and getting them through the winter. And of course, with the polystyrene, the insulation does a big is a major help too, and all. But that's what Ian would say, that the 6-framers seem to better over winter, much easier, I guess, because maybe a little more food.
Well, they have. Well, I'm going to back up. So they've had better luck than I have, but this is the first year I put 6 frames in. Now, I have had 2 6-frame nukes I know perish over the winter, but I also know that they went into the barn light. So,
food stores are just the amount of bees.
Both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both.
Right. But I don't know. It's like it is. It's beekeeping's an experiment. It's just constantly. What's that, Hannah?
I said a never-ending experiment.
Yeah, that's right. It is.
Let me see.
It's fun though.
He wants to see the other kitty cats that are on TV. He's got to be in the show too.
She's
Brad
going
has his cat, and James has his cat.
Yeah, mine buggered off. I think the wife was shaking the treat bag.
Ah,
So,
The let me see. Michael Buck, interested to know how many. I know South Carolina Beekeeper has a few he shows. What am I missing? Missed
what
something.
conferences? I don't know.
No, talking about they were talking about nukes.
well,
All
I was
right.
going to say tomorrow night. Is it on your channel or
My
Lou's?
channel tomorrow night. Yeah.
So I'll make sure I've got. They're all in the garage, but I'll make sure I've got a 3-way pallet out. I won't have the clips on it because it's not dipped yet. But I'll make sure I got a 3-way pallet out there. I'll make sure I got a couple queen excluders, and I'll make sure I've got a couple 10-frame boxes, and then I can kind of show everybody exactly how they fit up.
Let's see.
Yep. So
Well, I'm going to probably call her a night here, folks.
yeah, I'm going right behind you there. It's more. I got to go to work.
For some reason, my
Yeah, same
StreamYard is
here.
like funky today too. So
It's almost 11 here, and I got to
Yep.
work tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I do too. It's 11. It's almost 11 too. Lagrange, what's your first name?
Alex.
Alex. Okay.
it's writing it
Well,
down. You're
yeah,
on
I'm
a
writing it
permanent record now. So, have your
Well,
Canadian.
Alexander, but Alex is easier.
Huh?
Alexander. It's
Alexander.
Alexander, but
Yeah,
Alex
I know.
is easier.
Alex is short. Yeah, that's fine. No, what I do is I have a YouTube guest list, and I like to be able to just say your first name. You know, if you have like Gunline here, you got Tim and Hannah, and and I also try to find out what state they're in, and I know, it kind of gives me who I'm talking to and maybe what their environment is.
We're beekeepers. We're all in a crazy state.
Yeah.
yeah, crazy is part of the job description.
Yeah. But it's fun, and it's a lot of good people that's in it. And that's one thing. It was nice at Hive Life where,
Yeah, normal is boring anyway.
huh? What's
You-
more?
Normal is boring.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like you say, I was able to get into them. Let's see, what was it? Sunday. It was nice to be able to see the bees and look at them.
All right,
I
guys. Well, let's wrap it up for tonight, and we'll see you guys back again tomorrow night.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
All righty. Good night.
See everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Maybe